nganga nyangana bu madwara imadwara nganga bugarara bugarara.
My grandfather would bring me here, little one time, and big one. I know this place. This is my country. My grandfather's country. This one now. This river.
What I'm starting to see now in Australia is that the governments are colluding with the corporations and we are being colonised because of greed and rampant destruction of the landscape.
What's the cost to the community? What's the cost not only to the physical health, but what does it do to cultural health? What does that do when someone loses that connection spiritually?
We never born got money. We got enough money from government. We getting food and clothes, just short. That's the money we're using. Just short. We don't want the money. We don't need money.
I think it's a very important time when we, as world citizens, need to pay particular attention to what is happening in the Kimberley. There is much to learn from Indigenous people in regards to our journey of humanity and where we can take the world in terms of our learning.
Clean water.
We can run the country, we know what the rules are, we never forget. Together, shoulder to shoulder. We know what's right and what's wrong. Sorry about that, but we still got our culture. We still got our role. We still got a role to play.
Mabungimbi ngajino nilwala en palena ngayo imada waramane ngai manda jara nyigana nganga nyambo boru yaro jugun country mabungorin nganga love mabunganga nyundo. So in my language, which is Nyikina, I was just acknowledging that I am today sharing from Jugun and Yaru country in Broome. Broome is my home, but I'm a traditional custodian for the Fitzroy River. So in my language, I was acknowledging the river and saying that I am a woman who belongs to the Fitzroy River and that it's an excellent opportunity to share our love and our peace with each other and with the world. So thank you very much.
Beautiful. Diane, would you like to say a few words to open up this conversation?
Sure. Sego se wakwego. Gahandagwa shinyas. So grateful to Sangwe Disong, our creator, for giving us this opportunity to connect spiritually. And even though we're far apart on Mother Earth, we're still on this land all together. And I'm so grateful for all of the spiritual teachings that our peoples have given to us that stabilize us, put us on this land and give us our spiritual mandate that we need to fulfill in this lifetime. And to be able to meet together and to celebrate the land and celebrate the spiritual evolution of humanity is a total gift to me in this year of 2020. And I thank you all for the privilege of it. My Mohawk name is Gahandagwas. It means she's picking sweetgrass, and that's one of our sacred medicines. I'm Turtle Clan from the Ganyangihanga people, the Mohawk people at Six Nations in the Grand River Territory, south of Toronto. And when Vandana was studying at the University of Western Ontario, she was 1 hour from my home community. So our paths have crossed in Canada, and it's been a real privilege. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. Yahweh.
Thank you. And Vandana.
धरती माँ भूमि वसुंधरा हम वसुधैव कुटुंबकम एक परिवार हैं। कुछ सालों में भूल गए कि हम सब रिश्तेदार हैं। अलग अलग रंग के हैं, अलग अलग जीव हैं, पर परिवार तो एक ही है और जोड़ता है प्यार से और जीवन से। और यही हमारा धर्म है, इसकी देखभाल करना ही जिंदा रहने का रास्ता है, पर हमारा सब में ऊंचा धर्म है। I took the names of different names of Mother Earth. India believes so much in diversity. The deep India believes in diversity. The imposed India is a monoculture of the mind. And I took some of her beautiful names and said, you made us all relatives, one family. And the colonizers and those who mimic colonization have spent a few hundred years trying to separate us from other beings, from each other, basis of colors and religions. And it's a joy to be here with two other beautiful women and you to celebrate our oneness.
Thank you. May I start the conversation by asking, how important is sacred ceremony in the New Earth energetics in relationship to agriculture, food, and human health?
So I'll jump in here.
Oh, Diane, thank you.
I want to just say that, everything that we understand about life comes from our creation story. And that story tells us that we come from the stars. We say the Pleiades constellation. And as we come from the stars, we are created here. And when one of the spiritual beings that was with us as we came to this earth, he put his hands into the soil and he said these words, "The earth is alive." And that spiritual being was a helper of the creator to begin to create human beings. And so when we say, who are you? My people are Ganyangehaga people. Our land is called the land of the flint, the stone called flint. And it's an important piece to say, the clay that I am made of. When we refer to who we are, the clay that I am made of. And, when you think about who we are as original people in these homelands right across the face of Mother Earth, no matter if you're white, black, yellow, red people from the original families, what happens is that we have been given ceremonies of gratitude and thanksgiving that put us in balance with all those beings on Mother Earth and all of those beings in the sky world. Every ceremony that we offer is a ceremony of love, respect, and honor for life. And so for our people, we have ceremonies, an entire cycle of ceremonies absolutely geared to the sky world, the functioning of the moon, and the land itself. And so we're celebrating our midwinter ceremonies, the beginning of a new cycle of life, 5 days after the first new moon in January. And then all those subsequent ceremonies talk about calling the sap from the trees, our maple trees, the thunder beings coming home to awaken the land with the beautiful rains that are coming. All of those ceremonies are geared to those points within creation that sustain and uphold life. And that is the power of those original faith traditions, is that they sustain and uphold all life beings. There is not a hierarchy of life. There is a great circle of life. And, that's what ceremony means to our people. And without ceremony, there is no balance. That's how powerful words are, that when we make our morning invocations and we thank the four grandfather rings and the thunder beings that are coming in, the plant life, the animal life, the fish life, the bird life, the great waters upon the earth, all of those beings are sentient beings with a spirit. And when we talk to them and acknowledge them, we are energizing them, we're healing them, because they know that we love them and their spirit comes to stand with us. That's how powerful the ceremonies are. And I know that it'll be the same for all of your people as well. Thank you.
Vandana.
It is a very, very important process. Many, many years ago when I was in the US, in Chicago, I had something quite horrific happen to me, and I went to see a First Nations healer, and I just did it in good faith. And as we were driving in the taxi, we drove and drove, and it was almost like $100 later, we started to approach a place where we could see obviously that this is where First Nations people were. And as we drove up to the building, there was a man standing there with his hands all folded. And it was almost like he was waiting for me to come. And as the taxi pulled up, he leant down and opened the door and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I hope you can, because something quite evil is happening. And I need to speak with someone who can do some cleansing and smoking." And after the ceremony, he looked at me in the eye and he said, "Do you realize you have the power?" And I sort of stood back and I wasn't quite sure where he was coming from. And he repeated it 3 times. And then he looked at me and he said, "Do you realize you have the power because you are a human being?" And that really changed my whole life in terms of it transformed me from thinking of myself as just one little individual, but as part of a bigger collective of humanity. Because he looked into my eyes and he said, "Do you realize that if you want to be a brave, you have to be brave?" And so that has changed my life in terms of believing that we as human beings are gifted from the Creator with an intellect, to what the old people teach us, to be observant, to look up in the sky, to look down in the ground, to look for our non-human relatives. So when we are born as Indigenous people, we are given a totem. We are given like what we call in my language, a judin. So for me, my totem is the blue-tongued lizard. So that teaches us as human beings that we are equal with our non-human family. And so we grow within us a sense and an ethics of care and love to realize that we exist in an environment that is totally reliant on the well-being, not just of ourselves as human beings, but of our non-human family. So that teaches us that we have to grow this ethics of care, and it's a lifelong project. So, one of the things in this world is that someone said to me, "Oh, the Extinction Rebellion believes that if humans are so stupid, they will befall their own ill destiny. And don't worry, the planet will be fine because it will right-size itself and it will continue." And I had to pause for a moment, because what I thought about was very quick. And I said, yes, the earth is a living system. It will rejuvenate and heal even without humans, but it will be lonely without the vibrations of human beings. So ceremony is so critical in terms of having that connection, that connectivity to the land, so the earth can feel our feet when we dance, when we sing, when we give voice to country. So from that perspective, what we're saying is that this is all of us working together. Part of ceremony, and even with Indigenous research is ceremony. So every little thing about us is all about caring and having a conversation with non-human beings, with the earth, with the living water systems, and connection, because we must rely on balance and harmony. So that's what ceremony does. It continually awakens us to the realization that we are in a deep relationship through intergenerational genetic memory, because the earth is alive, it is a living system, but most importantly, it holds memory. And so when we connect through ceremony, we evoke the energy systems that make us fully human. And so therefore we can connect. So ceremony is so critical in terms of the work that we must do, but also in terms of showing the earth that we are connected and that we respect it, and that there are processes that need to legitimize our engagement. So ceremony is so critical. The songs, the dance, the connectivity between these systems, between human to human, but between human and non-human, are very, very important.
So as Diane mentioned, I had traveled to Canada to do a PhD in the foundations of quantum theory in London at the University of Western Ontario, close to her home. And I thought that was my life search, just going deeper into the quanta, because, you know, it's been a century and you can't solve the puzzle of life at that quantum level. So I said, I'll spend my lifetime puzzling over the quanta. And the two things that made me go deeper into our relationship with the earth and into agriculture was, of course, this beautiful movement of women from my mountain region. I come from the central Himalaya, and women came out when the forests were being logged and we were having floods and droughts like we are having with intensified climate change. But I always say climate change begins first on the land. Every harm you do that reaches as pollution in the atmosphere is a residual effect of harm you've already done to Mother Earth on the land. So climate change is a derived impact. The first impact is violence against the earth. And my sisters just came out and said, we're going to hug the trees. We're going to hug the trees so you can't kill them. You'll have to kill us first. And the movement was called Chipko, which means to hug. And I feel deeply that us three sisters gathered from across the world, actually the length and breadth of the British Empire, from Canada to Australia and India, that in a way we are doing a Chipko of the earth in our lives. It was 1984 that led to massive protests of farmers in Punjab. Then it became very violent. 30,000 people were killed in Punjab. Our prime minister was also assassinated. Then more Sikhs were killed across India. And as I watch my brothers and sisters, the farmers, sitting in this freezing winter night on the roads outside Delhi, my mind is taken back to 36 years ago when they were trying to do the same and they were not listened to. And Mother Earth kept getting harmed. 400,000 farmers have committed suicide. From being very prosperous and the givers of food, they have been reduced to destitution and debt. So I decided 36 years ago that I was going to search for a path of non-violent farming, non-violent to the earth, non-violent to farmers, non-violent to our bodies, because eventually that cycle that begins in the earth connects us through food and the health of our bodies. And if there's one thing this pandemic should teach us, it is the disconnection that leads to disease and healing. And as Diana called it, the circle of life. The circle of life is embodied in the circle of food. I call food the first currency. So I've been saving seeds because I didn't accept the fact that the Monsantos are creators and GMO means God move over. And the word Navdanya of the movement I started in 1987 means 9 seeds. Where did this come from? Ceremonies. But these ceremonies are not just reestablishing our relationship with 9 seeds, diversity. When I get deeper into Ugadi, where 9 seeds are grown and germinated, it's also a germination test. It's the highest science. And women were practicing it through ceremony. We had no division between culture here and science here. The ceremony is the science of life. It is the science of living. And then while I was traveling the country to tell people they're trying to patent our seeds, 91 when the Dunkel draft was released, I traveled the whole country, talked to every farm union, talked to indigenous people. And that's where the women from the heart of India for rice diversity originated. 200,000 rices were created by indigenous people from one grass. That's the brilliance of their science and their ceremony. And they said, come back for Akti when we celebrate this gift. And I went back to Akti, Akshaya Tritiya in the bigger language, and beautiful ceremony where they bring their seeds and share them as a commons and take it back as a gift and then actually do scientific trials on germination. And the germination rates are 99.9% successful compared to the corporate seeds, which are 90% failures in most places. So I would just say 3 things about the need for ceremony, that knowledge is in those ceremonies, that celebration and joy is in those ceremonies. For me, it's a tragedy that as the United States has collapsed as an economy, people are living through the pain through opioids, you know, And the highest killer now is addiction to painkillers. And if you look at the data during the lockdown, more people are dying because of addictions than the COVID, suicides. Ceremonies don't let you get to those dark places. They don't just rejuvenate you, they give you the collective strength to commit yourself to shape another world. And the word ritual is derived from the Sanskrit word rita. Rita is the right way of living in harmony with the universe. Anrita is the way the dominant system is imposing itself on us. Anrita is violating those basic universal laws, the laws of Mother Earth. So Rita gives rise to ritual. Ritual is our renewal of our relationship with the earth and the cosmology that allows us to imagine a balanced relationship. And that's why I am particularly happy about this dialogue and this conversation.
Oh, such profound words. And I think that Vandana, and I think the conversation around connection and joy is the thing that we share our messaging through. So, you know, in white fella language, we probably think we don't do very many customs, but we actually do through our connection with community. That's the thing that binds us. And I think, you know, I look at what's happened in Australia with these terrible droughts and how we've gone through such devastation to see the landscape go brittle and the effects it's had on our communities and our mental health. And the one thing that has brought us together is the connection. And, you know, I feel like it's the song and the dance and the celebration of our communities and the diversity in our communities. And I think I look at soil and how incredible the capacity of soil is when it's diverse. You know, the diversity of the soil is an exploration of the city in our communities. And when our soil is healthy and thriving, then the earth is healthy and thriving. Our connection to our earth and our communities are thriving. And so all of these beautiful conversations are all interrelated and woven, you know, so this is such a beautiful exploration of that connection of, you know, a bridge between what the sacred, our rituals, the way that we come together. And I think it's actually, for me, I've come through this space of actually it's not about the bridge, it's like us being on a canoe together. And the canoes are very sacred. Diane, I'm sure that you can share a story about a canoe, but I've gone through a journey of being able to follow a river on a canoe rather than relying on a bridge, just using our beautiful energetic footprint gently on the earth and following the river, the flow of the river, and on a canoe. And that's what's been, you know, that binding, that thing that's been really strong for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, I had a dream about 2 years ago, and in my dream I was standing by the shore of a river, and I was with a lot of young people, and we were going to do a traditional dance. It's called a stomp dance. So I had 2 rattles in my hand, and I looked out over the water and I saw a bird approaching. And when that bird approached, I thought, oh, this kind of looks like an eagle, but it was closer and closer, and it was, in our tradition, we call it a thunderbird, 30-foot wingspan, black, and it comes in bringing rain on its back and lightning through its eyes. So it's very much a spiritual bird as much as it can manifest physically. When that bird landed on a big rock, it spoke and it said, if you really want to heal Mother Earth, you are going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder. And, you know, I think that's what this conversation really is about. It's about that consciousness of the mind that is fueled by the spirit. There's a spiritual evolution of humanity that is unfolding now right before our eyes. And, you know, all of the prophecies of every indigenous nation point to this point in time and say, when you see Mother Earth suffering, you will see these things unfold. And so in our longhouse, we have Kaihuyo. Every year, our spiritual leaders get together and they remind us of all those prophecies that were given in vision in the early 1700s. We have seen them all come to fruition now. So what we are seeing is that there's a turning point for humanity, and some people are going to listen, some people are not. The organizations of the world that are not founded on a spiritual grounding are going to collapse. And we are seeing that all around us. And who are the people who are going to lead out of this big mess to create the new institutions are the humble people, the people who live closest to the land, the people who understand the language of spirit to be able to communicate with all of those plants that are behind you, and the trees, the waters, the winds, the air. That's what our spiritual training teaches us to do, is to speak that language of the spirit and to understand what we have to do as human beings to be able to bring ourselves more in alignment with those natural laws. This is a turning point for humanity in so many ways, and you can look at the economics of it. You can look at, the addiction that Vandana talked about. And I work in that field, in the city every single day. So at Canada's largest hospital for mental health and addiction. And so 9 years ago, we were told in one of our ceremonies that the greatest threat to humanity was going to be mental illness. I want to share with you a concept that we have in our way of life, and it's called Satni Gonala, and it is take care of your mind. It is such an important piece because we have teachings in and around the good mind: generosity, respect, honesty, empathy, caring, kindness, all of those things that you need to have for a good relationship with each other, but also with the land, because there's a reciprocal relationship that you cannot continue to take from the land without the land pushing back on you to teach you a really good lesson. That's where we're at today. And I hope humanity learns its lesson, because they've been warned by Indigenous people all over the world. They've been warned every time Vandana does her speaking, writes her books, has opportunities to stand on a global stage. Our spiritual leaders as well at the United Nations in the Permanent Forum for Indigenous Peoples on the global stage, warning people about what is happening to the land, to the water, to the air, and to all of the beings of creation. So some people are listening. And, I look at those empires that are falling now. And, as much as we've pushed back against them in our time, our job now, our real job now, is to create, co-create, unify and co-create new ways of working together for the land, the air, and the water. And I think gatherings like this podcast and millions of people in the world today could be on this podcast, because we are no longer in the minority and we are not alone. And what's really powerful for me is that no matter what governments stand against us, no matter what armies of the earth stand against us, what I know to be true is that the power of the Creator, the power of the Creator will prevail for those natural laws and spiritual laws. And that's where I'm aligning all of my energy with, is all of those traditional teachings, all of the power of the ceremonies, and raising up the minds of people. And really grateful just to listen to you now, because, that's the thing about Mohawks. If you give them an inch, they're going to take the whole hour. And we always say, don't give a microphone to a Mohawk. Thank you.
Anne, I'd love you to respond.
Yeah, no, this is exactly where we need to be going. And I think one of the questions we're all coming to this conversation about is, can we have a common and shared future under climate change as nations, as global citizens? And we have a concept in my culture called wake up the snake. And so wake up the snake means, how do you wake up the consciousness of the people to bring the people with you? So, ceremony, poetry, film, stories, conversations like this is waking up the consciousness of those people who want to come with us. We are building a coalition of hope globally. People are rising and looking at what Indigenous people are doing. What we're saying is that this ancient wisdom is exactly right in terms of where we need to bring modernity now. Just going back to the conversation about quantum physics, and many, many years ago, there was a profound person who was a quantum physicist, but he was also an anthropologist, David Maybury Lewis. And many, many years ago, he wrote and made a film called Ancient Wisdom in the Modern Times. And that has so much relevance because in our language, we have a word called Bugaragara. Bugaragara is not just the dream time. Bugaragara is the beginning of time. It is the past, the present, and the future fused into this moment in time in which we must act ethically. That is what quantum physics is all about. How do we bring the future into now? Because what we're seeing is that these young people who are inheriting the world we are co-creating are inheriting it now. They're living now. We need to show them that there is hope and that we are building this coalition of hope. It's very, very interesting because, it's not in terms of elitism, but we are the oldest living culture in the world here in Australia. We have been living and shaping the Anthropocene in living in harmony and balance from the beginning of time. So we have lived in a peace framework all over our nation of all of us coming together and connecting. It's very, very interesting because in 1684, we had an Italian map maker come to the Kimberley, and he painted a beautiful map of the Kimberley, and in his language, he wrote land of peace. So after living in peace and harmony and balance with the natural world, our lands and resources have been taken by act of theft and dispossession. But our view is that this ancient wisdom, these first laws of the land and our collective wisdom is not only a gift for our nations and for right-sizing planetary health and well-being, it's an opportunity to revisit spiritual and relational connection with each other. This is about multi-species justice. And somebody was saying to me the other day that sustainable lifeways and sustainability is the social justice issue of the century. And so we are bringing this ancient wisdom, we are bringing first law into a different place. First law is exactly what you were saying and sharing with us, which is about values, which is about ethics, which is about code of conduct. How do we live in a civil society and negotiate the rules of how we live in harmony? So first law is very, very much interdependent and interrelated with all life because all life is precious, the birds, the animals, the rivers. So all of this is about first law, law of the land, not law of man. And it is relational, it is non-hierarchical, and it is with our non-human relatives that we do this. So our ancient laws are based on ancient wisdom through stories, through song, through ceremony, and the law of the land is guided by these teachings and the learnings and the values and ethics and code of conduct. So in the Kimberley, we are guided by two laws, Wallangari law, which is the law of the Fitzroy River, and Wunan law, which is the law of regional governance, about sharing, about trade, about place-based governance. So it's really, really important that, as I said, Bugaragara, our laws go back to the beginning of time, to the past, present, and future. Most importantly, we are guided by a concept called Lian. Lian means your moral compass, your inner spirit to determine right from wrong for the greater good of not just human beings, but for the greater good of everything that is all around us. So Lian, through our actions, we can belittle and diminish humans, or we can raise their spirit up to join us. So first law is about raising and nurturing Lian, to inspire, to empower, to motivate fellow human beings to feel valued and to reach their full potentials. We come from a world of we, not me, and we must focus on community well-being and the well-being of all of our communities through circular economies, through prosperity that we define within our regions as what is the greater good, as opposed to being dictated to by invasive colonial development, which is really the greater good for a few. So, you know, these conversations are so critical in terms of understanding that it's all of us working together. It's all of us standing. It is about energy. It's the energy of our spirit. It's the energy of the land. And what we're seeing at the moment is the destabilization of our planet because the energy systems are being interrupted. They're being interrupted, they're being destroyed. And what we're saying is that the energy that we can bring to this conversation is an energy of love, of peace, of harmony, of balance, and seeing that within the entirety of place-based governance. How do we as people of the regions and of our nations look at mobilizing it? Because one of the things I've heard from Vandana is that we cannot rely on governments. We have to have a mobilization of people power, because whichever nation state we're living in, we see that there's collusion, there's corruption. And so there needs to be this awakening, as I said, wake up the snake. How do we wake up the consciousness of the people? And when you see what's happening in our nation states, we really need to wake this snake up. Thank you.
Well, we are definitely moving into an amazing time here on planet Earth with, I would love to discuss your individual perspectives on the events occurring on the 21st of December. We're literally ushering in a new era. And for me, that I refer to that as the new Earth energetic template, where we are actually in a state now of gratitude for all of this toxicity that has rained down on us. Literally a war on consciousness, because it's brought us to a flip in polarization between service to self and back towards service to others. So we're moving into this fantastic, great awakening, and we are communicating with millions of people all around the planet now. And from my perspective, we are about to move into ultimately huge dramatic step towards planetary regeneration on a scale that we have never seen before. And with that, a massive shift in human renaissance through cultures and communities. So I would really love to hear your perspectives on the events that are occurring on the 21st of December, 2020, which is only 4 days away. Diane?
So I'll share a little bit about what happened at our midwinter ceremonies in the longhouse of our people. That's our ceremonial lodge, and we gather there, and midwinter ceremonies are usually 5 days after the first new moon in January. And so the people will gather to celebrate what has gone on the year before, and also to give invocations for the coming cycle, never asking for more than what we had last year, but really giving thanks and gratitude and asking for the renewal of a cycle. And so in our way, there are set ways of giving prayers and invocations and songs. And they're all parts of a ceremony that need to be acknowledged and put through one after the other. And so our spiritual leaders stood up in the longhouse last year, and they gave us a message. And that message was, it was well received by the people. I can't say that all of us understood it. I didn't, I can say that I didn't fully understand how expansive that message was going to be. But what they said was that the year of 2019, when you look at our cycle, so from 2019 January to 2019 2020, they said everything we have done in that 1 year has been prayed for. So we have prayed for all of the plant life, all of the animal life, all of the beings in the waters and in the air, the thunder beings, the grandmother moon, the stars that represent our ancestors, our brother the sun, the great waters that are upon the earth, salt waters, fresh waters, rain waters, birth waters, the mineral life that is underneath our feet to the smallest microbes. So we have prayed for all of those elements of creation on the earth, over the earth, and in the sky world, because our duty as human beings is to recreate the magnificence of the sky world here on the earth. So they said everything has been prayed for from cycle to cycle. Now we want to tell you that the year of 2020 is going to be the year of miracles upon miracles. And you know, what I can say to that is that, you know, I sat there and I thought, in my own life, every ceremony that I've gone into, I have always prayed for the young people. I've gone into 4 ceremonies a year that were 4 days of no food, no water, dancing and fasting, sometimes all night, and certain ceremonies all day, 4 times a year. And every time I went into those ceremonies, I always took my prayers for the young people, that they would build a magnificent, beautiful society that's in tune with the natural laws of the earth and the spiritual laws that are universal for all of us. We can all agree on peace. We can all agree on love. And so that year of 2020 for me was a complete change of course. It brought us as human family to our knees, knowing that this smallest microbe, this little virus, can change everything in an instant. And, you know, if there was ever anything that needed to humble the human family, you know, we got it this year. And we here in Canada have not seen yet the worst of it. So we're going into a long winter. However, you know, when I think about December 21st, 22nd, what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling is that dark night is over. That there is a profound light that is coming that's going to shine into the souls of humanity. And some people will admit that light and others will ignore it. And you know, that's their free will, that's their choice. But something is going to happen to human family that is going to raise that level of consciousness in a way that we've never seen before. And that sense of need to unify, then it's no longer just up here in the mind, oh, we should, but it's in the heart. We need to unify. This is all about us standing shoulder to shoulder to heal Mother Earth. Remember the dream that I told you about? Stand, if you want to heal Mother Earth, you must stand shoulder to shoulder. That's the period that we're going into now. And, you know, I never mind about government. I don't mind thinking about, you know, military, because, you know, we've had our share of military oppression against First Nations people, and we'll probably continue to have. However, you know, that power of the Creator will outweigh any of those other pieces. And what I can tell you is this, that when you understand that language of spirit and you have a faith in the Creator that is unshakable, you will turn hurricanes from a particular direction to another direction. You will cause rivers to flow that have not flowed for generations. You will find that there is life in soil because you are loving that soil, and putting your hands of love into that soil brings life back into the soil. So it is what we say is that spiritual love that will empower us. And there's only one currency that's going to be important in these coming years, and that is the currency of love. And how do you manifest love inside of you, within your family, within your clan, within your nation? How do you manifest that love, and how do you share that love with other neighboring nations with you? That's what it's going to be, because, you know, what we have seen so far is that dark night. And we've seen it in the mind, we've seen it in actions, and we've seen its impact on the earth and on the poorest of the poor people in the world. And, you know, I want to declare that that dark night is over. The light is coming. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. As I said earlier in my start about waking up the consciousness of the people. And you know, in the film that we show you with 3 sisters, the senior elder stands there, the matriarch of our family, and she says, we can only do this shoulder to shoulder. So those words are very, very powerful. We've heard them here, we've received them, we have actioned them, we dream them as well. So we dream that we can only do this shoulder to shoulder. So it is time for our ancient Indigenous wisdom to inform legal pluralism to inform governance and equity for all. It is time to build a coalition of hope, and that is what is being mobilized globally. So we need to find these new ways of how to develop place-based governance based on bioregions and watershed. It is the time to transition from the old economies and transition to the new ways. So, you know, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I guess the message we are putting out, because the first question I had is, can we have a common and shared future under climate change? And COVID has been a direct consequence of this. And so over the year, we've been able to look at how COVID has influenced the way our nations have had to respond from a collective response. So it is about how do we transition. It is time for us to redefine what it means to be a human being, to have intellect, to have thought, to be able to transfer over time from the past to the present for the future. So this is about developing a unity pathway. This must be about cooperation, collaboration, and sharing of information, because when we have that, we can stand in unity, and so we can push those things away, and we can hold to the precious belief that to be a human being, we all need to be brave, because this work will require us to be brave. So from that perspective, I think it's been definitely an honor to be able to sit in this space and reflect on the wisdom of our elders who have instructed us to dream new dreams, and to find those people who believe in the work that we are doing and be able to mobilize that and come to together as a collective. I still stand with the view that we are all Indigenous to Mother Earth, and that we must all do our bit wherever we are, because the earth and the living water systems and the sky and even fire is watching us. And so the earth does hold memory. It is waiting for us to do the right thing. We are, as a collective, coming together. We all need to stand in unity, because this is the pathway that we're on. So I thank you for this time to help reignite the need that we are dreaming a new world. We are reclaiming what we were given from our Creator, and we are doing the best we can now, with the hope that our young people will not have to take the journey that we have led, and that they will see that they are, through their own due inheritance, and inheriting a world which is powerful, which is beautiful, which can show that we can create new economies which will not be destructive, and our living waters and our rivers will continue to sing with the birds and the humans. So thank you both for this opportunity. Thank you for creating this space for dialogue, but it is all of us waking up the consciousness of the people and bringing the people with us. Thank you.
I want to also express my gratitude to celebrate the oneness across cultures and the synergy that comes forth through self-organized emergent energy. I think colonization didn't just harm the lands and people they colonized, and it was a violent experience, and it's not over. When people say, but you never speak about capitalism, I said, tell me what it is beyond colonialism. You know, everything about the so-called capitalism is a new name for continuation of colonialism. Extract, enclose, privatize, and put down and call the most sophisticated cultures barbarians, who have to be civilized with the worst of violence. So energy, in a very, energy is the energy transition we are in. And the energies that are phasing out are the fossil fuel age, the idea that energy lies buried from 600 million years of nature's work, and that's energy, is already the first illusion. That's not energy. Because to use it, you have to create a lot of violence, where you drill it, where you mine it. Australia is connected with India with the new mine, and your people are rising against it everywhere in the world. The world's, the tar sands. Why do you have to squeeze oil out of tar sands? It's a very inefficient system. And because we began with agriculture, my work has shown that as an energy system, industrial agriculture is so wasteful, uses 10 units of energy to produce 1 unit of bad food, destroying our bodily energy, giving us the chronic diseases which are the real reason for deaths during COVID. COVID doesn't kill, co-mortality kills. If you have existing conditions, that's what's killing people. So this is not energy, and we have to reclaim energy. We have to reclaim energy from being an external input imposed on us to being energy. All of life is about vibration. The wave function of the quanta is a vibration. Spandana is how we refer to it. Everything living is organized in resonance. And that resonance is self-organized from within. It's in the seed to grow from a seed to a plant or a tree. It doesn't need an external input, fossil fuel energy. And that's where the Monsantos and the Mr. Bill Gates have gone wrong. They have made their ego so big, they think the world, the seed is waiting for Monsanto and the earth is waiting for Mr. Gates. No. I think the ceremony we need on 21st is to tell the poison cartel, the Monsantos, the old colonizers, the new colonizers, the past, the present, the future, and say, no, you have surrounded yourselves with such deep, violent emotions. We say no. The no from the deepest conscience is what Gandhi called satyagraha. The ability to work from your inner energy, your inner consciousness, to know when the laws of the land, the laws of the universe are being violated. And therefore you must align yourself with the laws of life and the laws of love, and disalign yourself with the laws of money and the laws of brute power. And, even plants, we had a beautiful scientist, J.C. Bose, who worked on electromagnetism in plants. He's one of the founders of electromagnetism. And he did amazing experiments how plants are living. And I'm just thinking of the new kind of pollution. Fossil fuels gave us climate pollution. Toxics gave us poison pollution and all the cancers of the world. I think part of the new transition is to be aware there's a new pollution being created, an electromagnetic pollution. And that this is harming bodies, it's harming other beings. And I think our moment is different because while Australia was far away, India was far away, Canada was far away from England, from that little island nation that colonized the entire planet. And they used to say, the sun never sets on the British Empire, it set very badly, and the Brexit is going to make it sink even more. And the sun doesn't. It rises and sets across the earth. But what the greed of the 1%, I have a book called Oneness versus 1%, the greed of the 1% or 0.001% has unified the world in a sense of this is wrong. This is not lawful. We need a change. And for the first time, we have objective conditions to connect humanity in a new liberation that is in alignment with the earth. We've never had this condition before. And so it is a special moment. And when people get overwhelmed, I always say, but the seed begins small. It doesn't worry, oh, I'm not the tree. It just does its work as a seed to become the plant and then the tree, or become the food that we eat. So we should not worry that we are not big to start with, that we are small in living circles of currencies of life and love, and that circles of small multiplied manyfold is a very big circle. Giganticism is a disease. The only organism that doesn't know how to stop growing and become big is the cancer cell. Living healthy cells know when to stop growing. They know how to interact with each other in mutuality and giving. So we have to move from an era of colonial grabbing, taking enclosures to shoulder, which for me is reclaiming our commons, reclaiming our common humanity on one shared planet. It is a beautiful moment, inviting us to do the best that our ancestors taught us, to learn from them and do it in new ways for very strange times. But that's why we have to be creative.
you know, one of the things that we keep on sharing is that this beautiful saying that we keep repeating. It's like a ritual for us, and it's take heart, for the earth's ability to regenerate has been vastly underestimated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm really sad that we're so short of time, because I think we could speak for another hour, but I'd like to maybe, if we could close a circle and maybe just do a little sharing each of you know, some wise words to our audience right now. Diane, thank you.
Thank you. I want to tell our audience how much they are loved and how our fires are burning for them in our lodge every single day. The fire, the sacred fire, is lit at sunrise, and it's carefully tended throughout the day with many prayers and offerings. And that includes all of humanity. And we offer these ceremonies every day, especially at the time of the beginning of the pandemic, when there was so much fear and chaos in society. And we just kept our fires burning, and they're still burning to this day, because we want people to know that as dark as these times seem to be, that the Creator has a plan for each and every one of us, that we don't have to worry about the big picture so much and be overwhelmed by it. But what we have to do is to really think about, what is my part in constructing a new reality, a new economy, a new education system, you know, an integrated community where we work together, where there is a commons, where there are communal values, where there is a moral code that we aspire to, and that we aspire to love one another, and the outcome of that, we want it to be peace. So I really, you know, want to uplift the hearts and souls of all of the listeners here, and the ones who listen to this program maybe for years to come, that at this point in time when it seemed the darkest, we never lost hope and we never lost faith that the Creator was in control, that the Creator had everything in his hands, and that our job is to believe, to act, and to live in a moral and ethical way according to our cultural traditions, loving the land and loving this life that we've been given, and not to waste it, you know, and to look for the healing we need when we feel those pressures of anxiety or fear or grieving or loss, that to uplift one another and to care for one another. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to echo that, and I want to thank the people for taking time out, because time is a gift as well. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come and listen to us share, to have sat there and watched the film from the three sisters, because it is exactly that, shoulder to shoulder. We need each other. We all come together as a collective because we have the commonality that we are human beings. So from that, I want to say that it is through our ancient wisdom that we all come together. The first law of the land, not law of man, and our collective wisdom is a gift to our nations and indeed to the planet, for right-sizing the planet for health and well-being, that we need to revisit spiritual and relational, that this is about multi-species justice, not just justice for humans, but multi-species justice, that this is interdependent and interrelated, and that all life is precious and sacred, the birds, the animals, the river. So from that perspective, I want to say thank you to those people who've tuned in tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to share with my two sisters across the planet. Thank you for your love, for your ethics of care, for your wisdom, for your sharing. And what we are doing is that we are waking the consciousness of the planet. We are coming united as human beings with the gift of this love and care, and that we are saying this is for all of us. And we want to ensure that we move forward in a collaborative way, in a good spirit, because this is what the first law is, igniting the human spirit, so that we can take action, that we can dream new dreams of how we believe that our world can be. So thank you all for sharing, and with great love in my heart, I want to say it's been a very moving and very feeling and energetic conversation, and we entrust this and give it to the viewers, and we say thank you for your time and for your love and for your ethics of care. We are building a coalition of hope globally, And with that, our young people can be sure that they have a future that we are building now so that they can also continue to reach their dreams and dream their full potential of what does it mean to be human. Thank you all.
This year of COVID and the year of lockdowns has intensified the sense of exclusion, intensified a sense of helplessness, and a sense of disposability, because millions have lost their livelihood and work, their food, their homes, everywhere in the world. And the word that came out today in the conversation was the word currency, which means literally to flow. That which connects. What connects us to each other is life. What connects us to each other is love. What connects us to all of the web of life is food. The web of food is the web of life. What connects us is water. What connects us is gifts. Giving connects us. Taking and grabbing disconnects. There is no scarcity in those other currencies that we have been made to forget. There's a scarcity that the money machine has created in money. And now is the time to say that was a construct of colonialism. That was a construct of taking and grabbing. We now need the currencies of giving and sharing. That is the new moment we've shaped. And there is no dearth of it. The earth is inviting us and saying, regenerate. Just give me a little bit of what I give you. Regenerate. The waters are inviting us to regenerate. And our little giving back to the earth in gratitude, our little gift of gratitude, is where the seeds of regeneration begin. For the new year, my greetings, so that we are part of this amazing miracle of regeneration, of which each of us can be a seed.
This has been a sacred edition of Regenerate, and I would like to say thank you with much reverence for this conversation. It is appreciated across the plane, across the world, and we will introduce a very special film now, Anna's film. And Helen, if you want to lead us into the film, I'd like to say good night, everyone, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And thank you. And we will now be watching Anne's beautiful film, The Three Sisters. And it's all about these beautiful women in the Fitzroy. So thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. Goodbye.
It's really important to look at what is natural law and what is spiritual law. Where do I as a human being fit into this whole process? And where do I as a human being contribute to it? How do I move the agenda forward? And so I'll just tell you the agenda very simply. It's the healing of Mother Earth, and it's the spiritual evolution of humanity. Two things. One cannot happen without the other. We have to evolve spiritually to a higher mind, a higher level of consciousness, in order for us to do the right things to heal the earth. So I'll check back with you in a year. You can report to me how you're doing.
Food is a weapon. They said when you sell real weapons and arms, you control armies. When you control food, you control society. When you control seed, you control life on earth. It just so happens that throughout history in every culture, it's women who kept the seed. I'm born in the Himalayan forest, and non-separation from nature was quite clearly a lesson. We had a classroom out in those forests. I chose as a young child to do physics, even though the schools I went to didn't offer it, because for me, physics was about understanding how the world works. So at the end of it, I did a PhD in foundations of quantum theory, and it's quantum theory that taught me how to make connections. Because of my book, I got invited to a biotech meeting where I realized what the industry wanted to do with the seed, which is to take control of the seed through patenting. That's when I started. I took a commitment to start saving seeds, but I also realized it's not enough to talk anymore. Got to do it.
40% of the solution to climate change lies in organic, ecological farming in the hands of small farmers.
Can't wait for governments and corporations to make the shift. People must. A GMO forced on people without a label is a criminal act.
Monsanto is proud to be the industry leader in agricultural innovation.
Monsanto sneaked into the budget law a clause that no court could ever rule against them.
We're committed to helping farmers double yields by 2030.
GMOs haven't produced more. There's only one way: ecological farms, small farms. And yet we get the propaganda: without GMOs people will starve, without chemicals people will starve. We have enough innovation and technologies to grow more food without killing our farmers. You have to throw the light of disclosure in order to break these secret bonds between manipulated officials, manipulated GMOs, and manipulated science. This is Gandhi. 7 social sins. Politics without principles, wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, worship without sacrifice. If I hadn't felt the imperative to come back to India, both to answer the puzzle of the disconnect between big science and big poverty, as well as just the surge to give back. I didn't know how I'd give back, but I had to give back. Little old lady from India. Why does she drive you nuts?
Ngajinu nilawal Anne Poelina, ngai imarora manen, nga manda jara nyigena, nga nyigena nganga, nga nganga nyigena vuru. My name is Anne Poelina. I'm a traditional owner from the Lower Fitzroy River, and I'm speaking today on Nyikina country. As a Nyikina person, we are told very, very early in our upbringing, and part of our cultural identity is the story of Wunyambul and how Wunyambul created the river, and part of that is the song cycle. The song cycle is the whole story that talks about the creation of the river, and through that the journey of our ancestor Wunyambul, and how Wunyambul travelled along the river with his family, naming the places from the very beginning of the river right through to a very significant place called Midgerigan. Everyone who has an association with the river, whether they're Aboriginal or not, talk about how important the river is And so for Nyikina people, it is a special, it's a special place. It's a sense of our whole creation. It's a sense of who we are as Imatawara people. Imatawara means belonging to the river.
Nganga, nyangana buru, madawara, Imatawara nganga, bugarara, Imatawara bugarara.
We talk about Unjumo, Nyikina I talk.
Malo kamalinga, inara kamalita, he belong to Madawara, he belong to river. We come here talking about the story. Nganga yang arinya nganga, pangalagara jibaba ni, ubani, chukuru ni, Nyikina nganga, rule ginjana.
One time now, anything creek nudging. No, nudging. Although I from Murray and walk, I am just Majala. I look on what all.
Punyumbun. Moklema pujumaman. Palo pulere. Chal pulere balo mokche. Majala mok lemai pache mok. Korwane wela. Pojo. Mijalana, Rajwangare Baloga, finish him right and no more left nothing.
When you will start any kind of thing, any kind of feed, any kind of fish and feed.
Even find them now, Mijalagan. That's what all. Right? Even see I want to fish for one. You have been poisoning that. What all? You have been poisoning. Finish.
This Mijirijan, where they've been talking about this water for fish like this, and they've been poisoning my beer. All this little rock here behind me, that's full of rock they've been putting but for fish, to kill the fish.
Kuwak yusiran, kiramulas pia. Pambogar, majeriwal gara mana det? Nyakadin maman, nyakadin bro. Mijala. In ngolakan ke putin kan wanjar. Ngolom ba, beal. Ngan go. Paya. Lakiran. Ngondong anywana ramaji wela.
And take him a fish, take him what, they've been poisoning him, take him, give him his wife.
Malo laurinji, malo charamba, malo walanga, malo parijar. Kurang amaginya na chal. Ngedgat pojong orange. Miliar ngulin manjalan jalan miliar. Kululululululululu irin. Kedariran. Wanyang ngulin manjalan kulululululu.
Niya, honyumbo. When he even see him, that young will get up. When he comes, I'm going to finish.
When you move in start before the Madwara River, that binding coming from Wunjumu, and we gotta talk about Wunjumu, and we teacher make him good. Everyone might look back. Young people, new generation, the Wunjumu might bring him up and make him work.
He made a rule. Rule for what you gotta eat, what you can touch him, don't touch him. You gotta do it the right way, properly.
Unjumo is a boss for river.
Next time, when you go river, you can hear them that sing out. When we're fishing, we can hear them there. Ooh! Oh, who sing out what? They sing out. That's one you know.
Nyikina people are the Yimadawara people, the traditional owners of the lower Fitzroy River in the West Kimberley region of Western Australia. My name is Magali McDuffie. I have been working with Nyikina women for the past 6 years, first as a filmmaker and now also more recently as a PhD researcher. Nyikina women chose the medium of film over 20 years ago to record their cultural activities and their stories for educational purposes, but also to document what is happening in their communities with community-based projects, the native title process and the current political fight against the mining industry in the Kimberley. Through film, Nyikina women have chosen to tell their stories spanning 80 years, 3 generations and very different lived experiences. This is a Jimbin Gabu Yimadawara Maninil story, which in Nyikina means the story of Nyikina women from the inside to the outside and of the men who support them. So I'm only here as the filmmaker, as the witness, with a camera, recording the stories that Nyikina women want to tell the outside world. In a sort of circular storytelling way, this film retraces our conversations over the past 6 years and centres around the lives of 3 Nyikina women, Lucy Marshall, Ginny Wabi and Anne Poelina, and their commitment to protecting the culture and country of Nyikina people.
I was born on Mount Anderson, but my mother was grow up in Libringa because my grandfather took all his family back there. The 2 brothers got shot. As we was growing up on that side of the river, Fitzroy, people used to walk from here, from Mount House, to visit my family in Upper Libringa and Mount Anderson. Walk. No riding horse, no motorcar, and walk back up this way to work. And these say history, what I've been told. I know who I am. I know I speak my language. I speak Bonova, I speak Mangala, because I grew up on Mangala on the other side of the river. Good family, right down to Ida, right down to Derby. Derby is a Nyikina town. Nobody changes anything. You don't change nothing. White man can change his rule, but black fellow don't change it. Even a God don't change his rule. Once one, never bend. It still belongs there. You can go on this side of the boundary, but you have to be aware. You go this side, it's still the same. My family, I don't think they're going to change. They know who they are. They can go visit their own country, their grandparents' country, their grandmother's country, their great-grandmother's country. They can still visit, as long as they know who they are. We still got our young generation. We're still bringing up their rights, what their rights are in their own country. We might have grandparents from overseas, but we are still Australian Aboriginals.
My name is Ginny Wabi. I'm from here. I've been born in Udela. Ungalgada, black for a name, that place now, that side. This one here, Mangul Creek. White man named Mangul Creek and black for a name Pudongon Gurai. my grandfather would bring me here. Little one time and big one. I know this place. This is my country. My grandfather's country. This one now. This river.
Kalau ngayan jual malangkol, nangan belanja, kalangan manja dia. Alea, pono, malam minalar ngarga. Nyado wangi luar boleh, nyado ngana, kalau ngana meja. Nilai dia. We came here a long time. We never near Fatam. All right? Clean water. Living water, this one. Living water, this one. You never finish it, this water. Living water, this one. We want them. You can grow along this water.
I was born in Broome and I grew up in Broome. So Broome's my home, it's where I spent my childhood, it's where I first had my association with Yawuru traditional owners. I've done, lots of interesting things with my life. I originally went into nursing and then decided to go into the field of education. I've been an academic, I've been a lecturer, I've nursed all over the state, and a few years ago I wrote a doctoral thesis looking at the impact of colonisation on Nyikina people and the influences of government. And the most important thing that I found in my thesis was that to some extent government has actually contributed to Aboriginal disadvantage, and in particular Nyikina people in the West Kimberley region of Western Australia. So several years ago when I was working in Lismore, I had a phone call from my cousin brother Robert Watson, and there was an invitation to come out to Bulgunja community and start to build on the dreams that we had talked to my uncle Ivan Watson about. And so there was a great opportunity to come back to country and to have a home and to have a sense of belonging, a sense of space, a sense of this was my traditional lands, because this was where my mother was conceived and this is where she grew up and spent her childhood. So it's such a wonderful place, and I knew from the moment that I first turned up there that I felt a sense of peace and a sense of belonging and a connectedness to that country. There's many memories that are on that place that I know that I'm now sharing, that my mother shared. To be able to lay out in the night sky and look up and see the stars and think, well, this is what my mother saw and this is what my grandmother saw.
Throughout the past century, Nyikina people have had to adapt and respond to different waves of government policies aimed at marginalising Nyikina people living independently on their land. The colonisation of the Kimberley first started roughly around 1879 with the arrival of Alexander Forrest and his exploration team. The report that he wrote about this expedition was very enthusiastic about the vast floodplains of the Fitzroy River, about a rich and bountiful country, and it literally spelt the end of life as Nyikina people had known it for thousands of years. Because pastoralists in the south and the east, hearing about the report, were very eager to claim their stake in this newly discovered area. And this happened at lightning fast speed. Bassi, in his book in 1915, points out that by 1881, 5.5 million acres had been leased, and that by the end of June 1882, this figure had trebled. Historical documents, police reports, newspaper articles of the time really only give a glimpse of what life must have been like during this violent period of colonization for Aboriginal people in the Kimberley. We know that some massacres occurred in different places in the Kimberley. We know that people were executed for not respecting the white man's law. We know that people were put in jail for cattle or sheep spearing. We know that people were taken away by force from their ancestral lands to come into the towns of Broome and Derby, brought in as cheap labour for the pastoralist industry, for the pearling industry on the coast, to build roads in chain gangs. So this was an extremely violent period which really shook the foundations of Nyikina society to their core.
I think it's really important to understand history, to understand pre-colonisation and post-colonisation, understanding how the Kimberley was developed and how that relates to how different parts of Australia was developed. For instance, some of the practices that white people practiced in Sydney, they were still practicing it over here 130 years later in the Kimberleys. They were still culling people out for the purpose of just getting people off the country.
People been a little bit weak from chain, from hitting. Carry have been hitting, or track have been hitting with that whip from stick. And I've been still working strong from hold that whip from carry have been hit me all the time, trap me with a stick or the chain. Or that rope, that pickly one rope, hit me, blood come waste and Nabaco Hospital and still working. I'm in a child house in all my place, look at one of them, whole people from long way, all the police force, they've been working here, carting people from long way station, bring them up here for courts, and I've been still here. And I've been looking at all the people from station and Pushman people too, with the sign and all that tree, that two white tree, tied up with the people, tied up with the whole people, and tied up looking down.
Then you look at how it was sought to stop killing people. Then the assimilation policies came in and they were putting people either into missions or people became fringe dwellers on the stations, living on the outskirts of stations because they saw them as an important part of labour to build these industries.
Young time and we've been working here, working like a missus. Working here plate, washing plate. When we're ready, we'll lay table. We put them knife and fork. We just never put them. And we put them lamb table. This kind of, we knock off work and we go camp and finish a little bit, have a rest and come back and have a shower and we lamb table now. All right. And we get them that plate, we wash them. put them away. And we wait, putting now. We're washing again, putting, clean up every kitchen, clean up table, chair, floor, clean up, put them away, everything. At work, we could washing clothes now. Washing, we're washing like that. We're boiling copper, seed and everything, we boil them. Right, we take a mud, we rinse a mud now, rinse a mud. And this kind, everyone seed. Rinse a mud, we hang them up now, hang them up, hard work. Wash them this kind. That's why I got weak now, this one, from work. You know what kind of white man? You don't have marriage supper? Gotta wait. Gotta wait until late, you have supper. When we go there, everybody sleep. Working hard, no money. We never have money. And if we only get them clothes, free clothes and soap and blankets, and mosquito net, that's all we get. And clothes, that's all. And tobacco.
So throughout this time of suffering, of violence, of radical cultural upheaval, Nyikina people somehow managed to maintain their culture and language. And today their ceremonies and their Bugarara stories, their stories from the dream time, are very much alive and part of Nyikina everyday life, and still unite the past, the present and the future for Nyikina people.
The sort of cultural knowledge is, it's in a sense, it can be very unifying for the generations. It can be what brings people together. Especially while I was young, growing up out on the station, I was involved in a lot of the cultural camps and things that were being run. So I can say, in terms of my own experience, what being part of culture was like, and going out bush and hunting and hearing the stories, hearing Wanyumbul, I can say it was really valuable to me.
We have a duty of care to transmit the knowledge from the elders to the young people. We have a duty of care to grow new leaders, not just Nyikina leaders, but new leaders who will lead the Kimberley into the future. In the very beginning, one of the things that the leaders, particularly our chairperson Lucy Marshall, wanted was to be able to have and build the Nyikina Cultural Centre. We see this as the knowledge hub that will hold a lot of the learning and the teaching through the Nyikina lands and waters.
It's very, very important to their culture coming here to the white man building to teach them. Because very, very important to learn their language, learn, see, think. Got to be very aware of everything what's going on. In the sky, down in the ground. Yeah, we know our culture, we know who we are, we're not somebody. We know where our boundary, we know how many language we speak. We know where our parents come from. We know where they belong to, where their roots are. We know that. That's what we who are. Respect our culture. That's what it's all about. We want the money to teach them English, culture, Aboriginal language, respect one another.
Lucy Marshall and Jeannie Warby have shown very, very strong leadership in terms of the Nyikina cultural actions. Over the past 10 years we've developed books, we've developed stories, we've started to develop a Nyikina cultural database. We're just about to produce our Nyikina dictionary.
With Majula Inc. we have worked for a number of years now to put these stories together, and so we tell the traditional story, a little bit of an introduction. It's in Nyikina language and in English, and with illustrations of a specific site in Nyikina country. Then there's a second story about the emu and why the emu has short wings. What did they say to him?
Ananganja, ngane wanguda nembaranga.
Kananganja emu?
You're going to jump one short.
You're going to always have short arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kananganja ngane wanguda nembaranga.
Jeannie's a very passionate person in terms of being able to keep language and culture alive, and she has committed much of her time in a voluntary capacity and has now taken that to a new level where she's been working with Jeannie Westwood to produce the world's first Indigenous software package, and Jeannie is very excited by that, and she's really made a valuable contribution and has been extremely dedicated to ensuring Nyikina language and Nyikina stories, and the vision for Nyikina people remains into the future. So part of the strategies that we've been developing is looking at micro-industries, looking at the opportunity to showcase and market what we've got on country, the conservation, the biodiversity, the culture, and to be able to produce small micro-development as part of a whole package to look at how each little area, each little group can influence development in their own way and contribute towards a macro concept of developing the Kimberley in a sustainable way. Part of the story, part of my journey is that I've been very, very fortunate in being able to collaborate with a very important person, Ian, my partner. As academics, one of the things we looked at was how could we create a wilderness centre, how could we create something special that was innovative and could be entrepreneurial.
We created the Modular Wilderness Centre as a campus in the bush. We wanted to be able to make ourselves sustainable and build our own resilience through having a sustainable economy, employment for our local people that brings money into the community. But we also wanted to create opportunities for people to learn in the wilderness setting, so they're able to learn information about Indigenous culture and also about the environment. The sorts of industries that the Modular Wilderness Centre will be promoting is things like tourism. So not only creating opportunities for international visitors and people from around Australia to come to the Kimberley and learn about Indigenous culture and about the wilderness, but also to create opportunities for young local people to learn about the tourist industry and also learn about how to engage the environment in a really sustainable way by being involved in land care practices and other ways in which they can build the sorts of industries that they want to be involved in and will take us into the future. It's really important that we diversify within our local region in terms of the sorts of enterprises that we start, because resilience really relies on diversity.
This atmosphere of hope, of energy, of new dreams being built underwent a radical change with the arrival of Colin Barnett as the Premier of Western Australia. His government made it very clear, very quickly, that the Kimberley was now going to be open slather to the mining industry.
What I'm starting to see now in Australia is that the governments are colluding with the corporations, and we are being colonised because of greed and rampant destruction of the landscape.
The Kimberley is under attack. We have a Premier, Colin Barnett, who said that he wants the Kimberley to be the next Pilbara. He wants to see mines all over the Kimberley. We know that there's the potential for coal, uranium, copper, diamonds, bauxite, iron ore, zinc, lead, as well as other precious metals. We know that this industry needs an incredible amount of water. We're really concerned that groundwater would be used and what that would mean for all the pools and the billabongs along the Fitzroy River, particularly in the dry season.
The Fitzroy River, or the Mudawarra as known to traditional owners, has been listed as a heritage site for the whole of the river. The traditional ecological knowledge to date demonstrates that we are talking about a pristine living water system. Now, the Fitzroy River is connected to water soaks, to springs, and to date we still do not know and understand from a scientific perspective what the relationship is between underground water and surface water.
Salt water comes up, you bring the barramundi up here. No one won't believe you. Into this place you see fish, see? This is Jarur. comes from this way and he meets the salt water in here. And this is a place, you know, they say Ungur place called Ungur. Come past here, and this spirit from here, he said, well, I'm going. I'm leaving Jaruru, see? Just leave this country, just move on. This Ungur Jago come here. And this is what they call Jaruru. Ungur Jago ne pendelen manana Jaruru ngamangari.
One of the things that's really impacted on the landscape has been a real rush for mining. There was a proposal from a mining company to mine thermal coal on the Fitzroy River. I think it's a very important time when we, as world citizens, need to pay particular attention to what is happening in the Kimberley. There is much to learn from Indigenous people in regards to our journey of humanity.
They think that we people here are dumb to our land, but they don't quite understand what it means to us. We have things here that been handed from our great-grandfathers, and as this generation now still carry on the past. And this is more important to us. Even our sacred areas, those are the things that we really don't like the mining people to ruin up. That's the argument we have with the government all the time. But government don't hardly see what the point we really get at. They like to just take what they can see. They just don't know how much they hurt our feelings. It hurts our memories and our families and our young generations. But we hope this time will come when other governments might realize that there's a human being, hardly can read and write, but he still has protection over his land. What he can see, what he can hang on to.
Country belong us. Place in a country. River and sea. For fishing and not for mining. Now mining here, now mining riverside, now mining in all other side. Now mining. I'm telling you. We're not under poison. Poison in river. We're under river for any kind of fish. That's one. We've been born on a river. We got a strong culture. We can dance for this river. We are strong people.
One of the issues that often doesn't come up is what is the real cost of some of these mining efforts? And in terms of often the companies might say, well, the cost is whatever the cost of the equipment and the immediate removal of earth and the labor costs and all that, without talking about what's the cost to the community? What's the cost not only to the physical health of people, whether it's ingesting different materials in their lungs or whatever, like lead in children, the impact on their physical health, but what does it do to cultural health? What does that do when someone loses that connection spiritually? What does it do when a sacred river is so polluted that people can't go there to have ceremony, to drink the water, to bathe, or to do whatever they did traditionally in that river? What does that do to their sense of identity, to their sense of self-esteem, to their sense of who they are as Indigenous people and as in relationship with Mother Earth? And what we've seen, what I believe, is that that continued process of constant attacks on our self-esteem, on sacred sites, is one of the contributors to post-traumatic stress. So it's not just physical health, it's our mental, it's our emotional health that has multi-generational impacts.
We are the native title of a hold of the ground. our paddock, our boundary. Up at the river, climb up and go down. And he goes back down to sea. And there is no blackfellow name. I said, oh, don't be silly. They got every blackfellow name right across there and across over the side. I said, every dialect language goes far as their boundary and that's it. Julian tells you. You cannot cross over that paddock. People know their boundary. Over there, that's where we drove past.
And so we never set out to be political animals in this process, but the leaders who I'm working with are very strong in terms of what we need to do, because not only are we as traditional custodians have a right to the land, we also have a responsibility to care for the land and all of the other creatures that coexist within that. So in more recent times I've become a Shire councillor with the Broome Shire Council, and it's been an interesting journey in terms of making me more aware of the planning reforms that are being developed by the state government and how planning reform also encroaches on the rights and the responsibility of local government. So in order for us to have the right to speak from our heart and about our own lived experience and to some extent to talk about the injustice that's happening on country is to look at connecting with different opportunities, to look at connecting with different people and networking and being able to say how can we have a voice in regards to what's happening and how can we bring some of this knowledge that we know of these experiences not only to people in Australia but to the world. And so part of that process is that the three of us have become involved with James Price Point, with Walmadan, and we were able to work with these senior cultural elders but also people like Mick Michael and Paddy Nyirawara and the traditional owners from Walmadan, and to be part of that process and part of that standing up for country and talking for country and providing a view that everything can't just be about money.
We never born got money. We got enough money from government. We getting food and clothes, that's all. That's the money we're using. That's all. We don't have the money. We don't need money.
I think one of the things that people need to understand is that for Aboriginal people, we are told that with native title we have no power of veto. So in regards to looking after the environment and defending the environment, what I have been able to do is use environmental laws to be able to bring about an opportunity to slow down on the process. In 2010, I was fortunate to go to America, and there was a gathering of 22 Indigenous philosophers that came from all around the world to prepare a statement for the world.
So many people are out there fighting hard and often feel isolated, they feel alone, and simply coming to an awareness that they're not alone, that every Indigenous community around the world in some way is facing similar issues. This world is everybody's world, and we all live here together. And people who make policy about environmental protection often tend to look at universities or scientists trained in a Western way or other activists who are pursuing their goals, when in fact the group that is most often overlooked and yet has probably the greatest wisdom of any group in terms of relation to the environment are the Indigenous communities. And so it's absolutely imperative that these communities be involved in the dialogue in addressing issues like climate change and how to mitigate impacts of other pollutants and how to work with communities for future development in a way that's sustainable, in a way that can be maintained without impacting the environment. And so including these communities is absolutely critical.
For me, it is about going back and exploring other international covenants and looking at the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. Early in 2012, we had a rare opportunity. My partner Ian and Magali McDuffie, our friend, we were invited to go to UNESCO to present what was actually happening and what was the story of Indigenous people that we could share with the United Nations through UNESCO. And so we were able to go there and have a conversation And we believe it's the start of a conversation and an opportunity to create real partnerships with people internationally.
If we are to survive, then we have got to listen to Indigenous peoples, and we've got to build those links between non-native and native communities and move forward as partners and in partnership of equals. And coming to the table doesn't mean simply sharing ideas, which is a very important part. It means being part of the decision-making process, not simply being informed after the fact, but being part of determining the steps that are taken forward and being true equals in that process.
One of the things that's very important that I've learned, not just from Nyikina people, but from people from the hill country, from Ngurinyan people, is that before white people came, we had a principle called the Wunan Law. And the Wunan Law recognises that in each of the different nations, everyone had their own stories, everyone had their own law, everyone had their own songs, and had their own way of doing community business and coexisting with the land. So the Wunan Law was a regional governance model. It combined all of the nations together under one code of conduct, values, principles for coexistence and co-management. So we're now looking at how can we bring some of those principles into regional governance, into a model that's going to include non-Indigenous people as well as Aboriginal people, caring for the land and for the Kimberley waters.
We can run the country, we know what the rules are, we never forget. Together, shoulder to shoulder. We know what's right and what's wrong. Sorry about that, but we still got our culture. We still got our role. We still got a role to play. Wurrungali is very important to Aboriginal people. Even now, I show my grandchildren, get up on the bank and watch the catfish circling. Little catfish, big catfish. That's a Wurrungali. Yunguru was singing that Wurrungali, the circle, big round. And they tell me, oh yes, no, you lie, well, you can't see, what are you doing? It's going around, and the little one's going opposite way, like a clock. That's the Wurrungali for the river. And in the moon, you find a circle, just for the saltwater, big tide, and Waramba, big flood, Ngalila. We know, we're ready. Not only the wireless and the European telling us on the news, oh, the cyclone or the monsoon coming. Yeah, of course the country is getting wild, angry. The spirits are getting, Mother Nature getting angry. We're losing all the people, washing the country away. And this has got to be stopped by the people. Those people are playing with the nature.
We're at a tipping point. And unless we take action now, unless we are forceful emotionally, perhaps in written documents, in video statements, in relationship building with governmental entities and scientists, unless we take those steps now, this tipping point means that if it tips too far, we won't be able to go back.
So the final message that I would like to leave the world is a song line that has been sung for many, many, many generations, from the beginning of time, from Bulgaragara. And Jabba Darby used to say, come in Jabba Jabba, come in Nyul Nyul, come in all the different people, come in Mangla people, come to the river, let it feed you, let it soothe your spirit, and then go back to where you came from and tell your people out there how important the river is. And in more recent times, before Jabba passed away, he was singing a song, come in Japanese people, come in Chinaman people, come in English people, come in French people, come to the river of life, the Mudawara, come and show the world that this is important for all of us, for our humanity. And the song cycle now is to go forward. So all you people out there, come and hear the call from Jabba, come to the Kimbleys, come and support us, because we are standing up for humanity.